Grace to you and peace from the God who created us, the one we come to know decisively in Jesus the Christ, one whose Spirit will sustain us in this and every moment. 10 of us went to New Albany yesterday for our own good and on your behalf to attend the memorial service for Janet Peterson. Janet and Sid were members here at Bethel for many years and for 2 seasons. Once about 50 years ago, before their move to Louisville, and then more recently until they moved to New Albany to be near their children, Mark and Nani. It was there this summer, just in July, I think, that they celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary. On the way over, I had an epiphany, a revelation of sorts. Because of the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation last week, and because of the way All Saints and our stewardship season fall, we've invited those of you who are mourning a loved one's death over this past year to make a special effort to be with us this morning, which also happens to be our major push before Stewardship Sunday. Not the most sensitive thing to do to offer those who mourn to come when we are asking for money. But we aren't asking for money, well, we are, but we're doing more than that. We're asking for all of us to consider the ways we steward our lives, the ways we care for and use all that God has given us. So All Saints Day is really a good day to talk about stewardship, about those who have tended the household, the saints. It's not such a stretch. You see, saints are really those people who have taken good care of themselves and of others. So saints and stewards are just like that. Now, the Gospel of Matthew that Bruce read for us is divided into 5 discourses, perhaps to parallel the 5 books of Moses, the Torah. The 3rd book concludes with the naming of the 12 disciples, perhaps to parallel the 12 tribes of Israel named in the reading from Joshua. Matthew understands Jesus' ministry is to restore Israel, not to abolish the Torah, but to fulfill it, not to supersede the Jewish faith, but to renew it, to give it new life. And the text for today begins the 4th discourse, the missionary discourse. Jesus is preparing his disciples to go out on their own, so they become apostles, that is, the sent ones, and we, friends, are their heirs. Spoiler alert. In a few minutes, Clark is going to encourage us to lead by example. And that is certainly what the Petersons did for us. Janet was a great hostess. She enjoyed entertaining others and laughter and serving. And Sid even yesterday was asking, what more can I do? They led, and Sid still leads by example. And that's exactly what Jesus has been doing for the disciples up to this point, leading by example. But now he sends them out on their own missionary adventure. They are to be, as he was, a wandering beggar. Have you ever thought of Jesus that way, as a wandering beggar? I mean, I've heard the passage Bruce read 1,000 times, but I never quite caught that Jesus was telling his disciples how to beg. Now, I don't know about you, but that runs completely counter to my upbringing. And I'll bet you were taught, just like I was, to be self-sufficient. And here's Jesus telling the disciples to be wandering beggars, as well as preachers and healers. They are to do what he did: cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, and cast out demons. The only problem that he foresees for them is the same problem that N.T. Wright, a great British theologian, imagines when he comments on the same story. N.T. Wright writes, "But how will I know the way?" Wright asked, setting off on his first solo car journey. "Don't be silly," said his mother. "We've been going there for years. You'll know your way, all right." But, N.T. Wright says, I didn't. I recognize many parts of the road, but it's a different world when you're behind the wheel than when you're sitting in the car while someone else makes the decisions about which road to take. It's a completely different thing when you have to do it for yourself. So Wright got lost. 5 miles from his home, he had to backtrack. He had the embarrassing experience of having to ask someone for directions, just like he was a stranger in his own territory. Well, so too it is for us when we follow Jesus. And as we follow in the footsteps of some of our saints, like Sandy Schaefer and Dick Lacy and Janet Peterson, and if you will allow me, my mom, and all those others we are about to name during the great Thanksgiving of our communion service. When we were with them, it was much easier to know how to go. But now we're on our own. We've heard and we've watched and we've traveled alongside, and now we're out there on our own. How do we travel? Well, all those things Jesus told his disciples to do or not to do were meant to distinguish how he went from the way his contemporaries or his competitors went. So here's what he tells us to do. And here's a suggestion of a way for us to apply it now 2,000 years later. Don't go to the Gentiles, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That is, let's get our own house in order first. We can't go out there until we're okay in here. Now, some of us will say if we wait until we're all okay in here, we'll never get out there. But that's part of being out there all along. You know, there is something about getting it together before you go out, but for some of us, going out is a part of getting it together. But we need to look at ourselves first. That's why we confess on Communion Sundays. And then Jesus says we've received without payment, so we're to give without payment. The gospel is free of charge. It's like grace and love. We didn't earn it, we can't buy it. So don't get confused in stewardship season. We're asking you to help us keep this community of faith together. We're not asking you to buy love or grace or forgiveness. Those are gifts. But it does take a little bit to share the gifts. Jesus says don't take any silver or copper or gold. You see, other philosophers of the day have preached voluntary poverty. The disciples, though, were not to take valuables because they already have what is most valuable. You can't put a price on what is most valuable. And that's relationships and love and grace and forgiveness. And besides, if you're always thinking about money, you don't have time to really think about what matters, like people and God. So clergy are given a salary so they don't have to think about money. They can think about the church. Confession, sometimes we get that all messed up. And we need to reorder our lives. And the gospel says don't take a bag. You don't need it. You can trust other people to provide. And don't take 2 tunics. Wear one out first. And don't take a staff. That's because other people use the staff to ward off robbers. And you remember how Jesus was. He ate with robbers. He didn't walk off. He invited them to the party. Not because he was worried about being robbed. He was more worried about the robbers themselves. Now, I've already shared with you this morning that we got to lock our cars because somebody helped themselves to some of our electronics last week. But an interesting thing happened as the 2 families told me about what they lost. They were not so concerned about what they lost, but about the people who took it. They both said something to the effect of, well, they really weren't being very Christian last week, were they? Yet their emphasis was on the person, not on the stuff. Isn't that what we're about at Bethel Church? About the people, not stuff. Oh, that's not an excuse, but it is to say, let's get what matters most. So I'm going to go off script a little bit. You know, the big thing is the opioid crisis right now. But we'll only get that solved when we focus on the people more than the crime. It's the people. It's the people. It's the people. The folks who were robbed last week, both families mentioned the people. Last admonition. Stay where you're welcome and leave where you're not. Duh. I mean, we were talking in the car coming back from New Albany. It's kind of like those drug commercials, you know. Take this, unless you're allergic to it. Stay where you're welcome, leave where you're not. And don't just leave, but shake the dust off your sandals. Now, I had to smile when Katie, Janet's granddaughter, shared some of the things she learned from her grandmother. She didn't say shake the dust off your sandals, but listen to some of the things that Janet's grandmother had taught Janet and that she passed on to Katie. Treat people with respect, show hospitality, smile often, laugh a lot. You may have heard this one. Stressed, spelled backwards, is dessert. Desserts, plural. And here's the corker. If it isn't going to matter in 5 years, don't spend 5 minutes worrying about it. Now, the Petersons' lifespan for worries is much shorter than the Weiners. My dad told us it won't matter in 100 years. My dad took the long view, 100 years. Janet, much better, 5 years. 5 years. You see, the gospel window is not even 5 years big, 5 years long. The gospel window is shake the dust off now. Now I know and you know some folks have left. Let's go out and find them and encourage them to shake the dust off. Because it's the people, the people, the people. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend 5 minutes on it. And if you think it's going to matter in 4 or 5 or 6, well then take the Weiner view, because it's not going to matter in 100. Or as my friend Armando would say, if you're worried and you can do something about it, do it. And if you can't do it, move on. Shake the dust off. I'm not sure all the saints who will remember today lived by that, but I do know we're encouraged to live by that. If we can do something, let's do it. And if not, well, let's just shake the dust off and move on. The gospel mandate: love, grace, forgiveness, free. If that's not happening for you, move on. But it's happening here. So let's go out there. Let's do it.